Harvard Business Review, Harvard Business School did a fascinating analysis of craft versus commodity. And there are really important differentiations between craft and commodity. And the problem is when we're in craft, being tempted over into trying to be commodity with scale, and by the same token, something at scale trying to present itself as craft. And the whole point of the Harvard Business article or analysis was you can make money in craft and you can make money in commodity, but you gotta stay in your lane. And one of the differentiating parts, one of the things about craft is it has to be, the margins have to be higher and it has to be differentiated. Commodity thrives on low margins. Everything's about who can be the lowest cost producer, right, in commodity. And lack of differentiation. When every cow looked the same, every bushel of corn looked the same, everything looked the same. It's all about non-differentiation and driving the cost down to where you're the least cost producer. And so it's easy for us, one of the things that can move us into this part where we head downhill again is we come up here with our craft, we get good at it, we develop mastery at it, we find our sweet spot here, and we're cooking along with our nice branded, differentiated, artisanal, high quality thing. Wow, this is going good, let's double in size, and suddenly we're not big enough to be Tyson, but we're too small to just do it ourselves. And then suddenly we've got people we have to pay, we've got workman's comp, we've got a host of other things, whether it's storage of grain, overrunning the processing. Now we have to get freezers. I mean, I remember we were up to 13 freezers when we finally bought a walk-in. And people always ask you, how soon I need to get a walk-in? Well, we got to 13 freezers. So anyway, I just want to make that point between craft and commodity, because that is a quagmire that's easy to get into. And especially when you get on the tail of something you think is really doing well. Oh man, well, let's ride this horse, right on, and it gets, and suddenly you get to this diminishing returns, and then you get to negatives as it starts to tumble down the other side.
So is there, if we're going from, say, homesteading still,
yeah,
we're just feeding ourselves,
uh-huh,
and we're starting to work in scaling up to where we have some to sell, right? Mm-hmm. But we're still in the craft area. Is there a general rule of thumb for how big do we need to get scaled before we can really expect a profit? Because right now, I'm subsidizing everything.
right.
How big do we need to get before it can pay for itself, or is that the wrong question?
How big does it need to get before it can pay for itself? The question is, you're starting in and you're moving forward with your item. Where is that sweet spot where it finally tips over from my subsidizing it with either outside income or another enterprise to where it's a standalone? Well, remember, there's only 3 ways to increase profit. You can either increase your price, reduce your cost, or increase turnover, assuming you have a positive turnover, a margin, okay? I remember well a local cow trader guy in our area, he put together, he would go out and he would buy little herds, and he'd put together potbelly loads to ship them out to Nebraska and Kansas, you know. And he was complaining about losing money on every calf, you know, for a little bit. Obviously, he didn't lose money all the time, but this particular time he was losing. I said, well, Joe, his name was Joe. Said, Joe, what's the solution? I had this real deep, gravelly bass voice. Oh, I guess just got to buy more calves, you know. I said, no. If you're losing on every calf, you know, the answer is not buy more calves. And so so you have to establish a positive margin, and you do that with your time and motion studies, keeping your expenses categorized, your accounting categorized, so you can actually tease out where that margin is. And then all the things that Grant was talking about, you're looking at that enterprise saying, where can we increase our price? Do we have room to wiggle on that? Can we reduce our cost? Or can we increase turnover? You know, assuming the margin is positive. I mean, those are the three pieces you gotta work with, and it's gonna be different for every person, and the weak link is going to be different in every place. Sometimes the weak link is time. You know, labor. It's just too inefficient, and I can tell you, having been in this pastured poultry space all my life. We have benchmarks. We have SOPs, standard operating procedures, for moving a chicken shelter. Our SOP for moving a chicken, you know, the little field shelters, 6 pages long. So when I say, go move chickens, there's a 6-page SOP behind that phrase. And one of the benchmarks is every 60 seconds. Every 60 seconds. And I can tell you there probably aren't a dozen people in the United States making that benchmark, because they either make the shelters too heavy, or they don't make a dolly like our dolly that's designed and engineered exactly like ours, or they're moving them. I mean, here we were doing this for years and years and years, just to show you how you never get done. Grant mentioned Stephen Covey. Sharpening the saw is one of the principles. We've been doing this. I'd written the books, and doing seminars. I've been doing this for years. We had an apprentice several years ago. Said, "Why do we ever move the chickens west?" And I said, "Well, you know, we've got these." So at our place, the two main fields that we run the broilers, they're not rectangles, but I'm just going to draw them as rectangles to make this simple, okay? They're two rectangles, and this is a riparian drawdown. This is all a marsh with a great big pond here, a pond here, and this is woods back here, okay? So there's no access around this end. The only access, you can go onto the road here. There's a road here. It comes around here and comes up alongside this field. Okay, that's the access. So if we start the shelters, and so this is east and this is west, and so if we start the shelters up here, okay, you know, and we're moving in this direction, when we get up to this end of the field, we're going to take them from here over to here, right? And then we're going to move them east to west, right? Makes sense? Here's the problem. Those chickens move a lot easier going east than going west, because the open end faces east. Our wind comes from the west, so that's where we want the protected, the capped end, all right? Well, that means that end is dark, or darker. The east end of the shelter is open, all right? When do we move them? Daybreak, okay? Where does the sun come up? In the east, okay? So the birds move substantially faster if you move them toward the east, where the open end of the shelter is, they want to go to the light, they want to go to the sun, they can see the new grass, they can see the grasshoppers running around, they're eager to push up against the leading edge of the pen of the shelter as you move it. And when you move them west, you're asking them to walk into the dark, they can't see it, away from the sun, they don't move as fast, okay? And it was one of these things. Well, I knew that they'd move better going east than west, but you know, that's where you start. And so after he said this, it was like this, you know, yeah. Once we already have them on hay wagons and lowboys and we're moving them from one field to the other, it doesn't take but another 30 seconds to run up to the end of this field and set them up here when because these fields aren't big enough to take us for the whole year. They're about big enough to take us half a year. So after he was there, now our protocol is we go ahead and if we're running them east on this field, we bring them up here to this end, and we run them all the way back here and set them up so they run east on this field as well. Saves us, you know, it makes it you don't break any legs that way because they all want to go to the light, and they move a little bit faster. Well, if you're moving 50 shelters, remember we got 210 of these, okay? So if you're moving 50 shelters and you can knock off 15 seconds per move, whatever that is, you know, 750 seconds is 12 minutes, you know, 12 minutes per morning times 7 mornings a week is 84 minutes a week. We just bought almost an hour and a half just with that little change. So never get done refining is my point. You never get done refining. You always got room to I thought I had it all figured out, and then I didn't. But it took, I think there are two things on that. One is never get done refining. The other is you can never underestimate the value of a set of eyes looking at what you're doing that's not you. Of having a new, the most dramatic that I've ever had, I was doing a consult on a farm in California. And they were up in the Petaluma area, steep terrain. I mean, they were running chickens on some fields that, you know, it was really, really steep. And here again, they had a brooder down here. They had a farmstead. This was a deep valley here. And then they had this steep road that went up here. And then they had these, you know, they had a real steep field, you know, here. And this was the bottom of it because it all came down into this valley. And then up here was the ridge, okay? And they were just, man, we just can't begin to make your benchmarks. Now I go over there, and here they've got their shelters down here. And they're moving them up this hill that you can hardly walk up. I said, well, why don't you, remember, here's the brooder, here's where they're starting the little chicks, okay? So, well, why don't you take all the shelters up here at the top, take your chicks up and put them in and move them down the hill. I mean, make it easy. Never thought, why? Well, because here's the brooder. We set up the shelters here, and the brooders are close. The shelters are close, so we're gonna set them up close so we can revolutionize the farm. Revolutionized it. I'm Joel Salatin, editor of Stockman Grass Farmer. Thank you for watching this Stockman Grass Farmer video, where grass farming is celebrated for its possibilities and opportunities. You'll find more at the links here to find additional material in our library. You can see a lot of different videos and enjoy learning more about grass farming. We look forward to visiting with you more and more here as you make Stockman Grass Farmer part of your video portfolio.